The Cold War offered, well, existential dread, but also serious development when it came to military hardware, as pretty much the whole thing was one big massive arms race. Naturally, the new jet aircraft that had started coming into the fold towards the end of World War II benefited greatly from this, as multiple nations rushed to produce the latest and best jet-powered planes. There are a lot, and I mean a lot, of jets that we could talk about on a list like this, and narrowing it down to 5 was, well, about as hard as doing it for World War II, honestly. But I did manage to pull it off, so let's talk about 5 criminally overlooked jets from the Cold War. The Avro Canada CF-100 Canuck. Canuck. Calling it the Canuck is about the most Canadian thing they could have possibly done, and I respect it. Also, they were affectionately referred to by their nickname, the Clunk. These were twin-jet interceptor fighters, designed by Avro Canada, and it actually has a distinction as being the only Canadian-designed fighter that managed to enter mass production. Development on it dates back to 1946, in response to the Royal Canadian Air Force's specification calling for a jet-powered interceptor fighter aircraft that was suitable for long-distance patrol missions as well as all-weather operations. The prototype first flew on January 19, 1950, and the plane was introduced in 1952. They wouldn't be withdrawn until 1981, and they would produce 692 of them. They mostly served the Royal Canadian Air Force, but the Belgian Air Force also used a few of these planes. They had a crew of 2, a length of 54 feet 2 inches, a wingspan of 57 feet 2 inches, a height of 14 feet 6 inches, and a gross weight of 33,450 pounds. They were powered by 2 Avro Canada or Renda 11 turbojet engines, rated for 7,300 pounds of force each. They could reach a maximum speed of 552 miles per hour. They were actually very impressive aircraft for their day, hence why they lasted as long as they did. And Avro was going to push forward and produce the successor, the CF-105 Aero. That project is its own story, and resulted in tragedy when the whole thing was cancelled, with every single one of them being destroyed. However, the Canuck managed to make it into production, as I mentioned, and there are a ton, and I mean a lot, of aircraft on the static display. There are so many that enter preservation, and while they tend to be overlooked outside of Canada, there are many natives that still appreciate the good old clunk. The Douglas F4D Skyray. This very interesting carrier-based fighter interceptor was designed and produced by the Douglas Aircraft Company. It was actually the last fighter to be produced by them before they merged with McDonnell to become McDonnell Douglas. The development on it started in the late 1940s, and the prototype first flew January 23, 1951. But the type wouldn't be introduced until 1956, and they wouldn't even last 10 years, being retired in 1964. Though they would manage to make 422 of them. Doubtless you've already noticed they had a very unique, especially at the time, delta wing design that allowed for a very high rate of climb, because while it is a fighter interceptor, it was mostly developed for the interceptor part of the equation, high altitude specifically, so they wanted it to be able to climb as quickly as possible. And to be honest, the planes only were delayed so long because of difficulties not with them in themselves, but with the engine they chose. They wanted to use the Westinghouse J40, but development on that turbojet was a complete nightmare. They never got it working properly, and the whole thing would be cancelled. They also had some aerodynamic issues that had to be overcome, and the production standard version of the plane wouldn't even take to the skies until 1954. Also, I know I called this the F4D, but just to be clear, they were redesignated later to the F6 Skyray. So in case you've already written in the comments correcting me and yelling at me, you might want to delete that before I see it. I'll pin it. I'll do it. I'll let everyone see. Don't think I won't. During their service life, they actually set multiple records, even though they never did get a chance to participate in actual combat. They were the first carrier-launched aircraft to hold the world's absolute speed record, reaching 752.943 miles per hour. They also set a new time-to-altitude record, flying from a standing start to 49,221 feet in just 2 minutes and 36 seconds, flying at a 70-degree pitch angle. They were honestly pretty impressive for their time, but their time just wasn't very long. The US Navy and the US Marine Corps did use them, but more advanced aircraft came into the fold very quickly, making the Skyray obsolete almost as soon as it showed up. Which is a shame, because had they shown up sooner, they probably would have lasted a bit longer. But the J40 engine really set them back, and the Skyray never really had a chance to shine as bright as they probably deserved. In case you want to know the statistics, they had a crew of just one, a length of 45 feet 3 inches, a wingspan of 33 feet 6 inches, a height of 13 feet exactly, a gross weight of 22,648 pounds, and their power plant was eventually changed to a Pratt & Whitney J57P8 afterburning turbojet engine, which applied 10,200 pounds of force, or 16,000 with an afterburner. Their maximum speed was 722 miles per hour. At least that was the given top speed, although obviously they could go a little bit faster than that. And the rate of climb was 18,300 feet per minute. Despite their short lives, a few did survive into preservation. It can be seen at multiple different museums all across America. The Fiat G.91. Fiat? Fiat made a jet? Wait, this is Italian? An Italian jet! During the Cold War, yes! Those in Italy are probably quite familiar with it, but outside of Italy, this aircraft is a bit more obscure. It is indeed a jet built by Fiat Aviazione, which would merge with Air Italia later. The origins of this particular plane have to do with the NATO-organized NBMR-1 competition that was started in 1953, which was looking for a light fighter bomber to be adopted as standard equipment across the air forces of multiple NATO nations. This aircraft was specifically designed to fulfill the requirements of the competition, and the prototype first flew on August 9th, 1956. And it won! No, seriously, it won the competition. It was a really good design. Fiat did a great job with it. They would enter service in 1961 with the Italian Air Force, of course, because it was their homegrown baby. It was also used by West Germany, and a few other nations did adopt it as well, like the Portuguese Air Force. They would produce about 770 of these, remaining in production for 19 years. They were quite beloved, actually, by the nations that used them, to the point that even we in America did evaluate them in 1961. We never adopted them, but we did take a look. They had a crew of one, a length of 10.3 meters, a wingspan of 8.56 meters, a height of 4 meters, a gross weight of 5,440 kilograms, and they were powered by a single Bristol Siddeley Orpheus 803 turbojet, providing 5,000 pounds of force. They had a maximum speed of 668 miles per hour. Based on those statistics, you could tell they were pretty simple jets, but that was kind of to their benefit. They didn't do anything super bold, they just focused on fulfilling the requirements that were given to them, and they handled it flawlessly. Everyone that utilized them really liked the planes because they were just so easy to work with. Well, except the Luftwaffe. Yeah, West Germany didn't like them very much because they were disappointed with their performance. They felt they should have been faster. But outside of them, though, the planes actually performed alright for what they were supposed to do anyway, and they actually outlasted the Cold War itself. Italy wouldn't retire their G91s until 1995. So, not a bad showing all around, for such a simple little plane. The Lavochkin La-15, NATO designation, Fantail. I don't think it would be a Cold War list if I didn't at least attempt to put a Soviet fighter on here, and I think the La-15 fits the bill in terms of obscure and overlooked, because this is a very early Soviet fighter, and a contemporary to the MiG-15. The MiG-15 is very well known, but the La-15 not so much. Why is that? Was it bad? Well, no, not really, not at all. For early jets, they were actually pretty good. The prototype first flew on January 8th, 1948, designated Aircraft 174, and they were introduced to the Soviet military in 1949, but retired in 1953. They only lasted 4 years, and they only made 235 of them. What the heck happened? Well, they had a crew of one, a wingspan of 8.83 meters, a height of 3.8 meters, a gross weight of 3,850 kilograms, and were powered by a single Klimov RD500 centrifugal compressor turbojet engine, capable of delivering 3,500 pounds of force. Their maximum speed was pretty impressive for those days, 626 miles per hour. So that sounds alright for the time. What was the deal? Well, pilots actually really liked it. They were easy to handle and reliable, and they had a pressurized cockpit, which was a huge benefit for high altitude performance. But the officials of the Soviet Union didn't really like it very much. Even though the La-15 actually had a number of technical advantages over the MiG-15, the MiG-15 was cheaper. That's it. That is so Soviet of them. The La-15, while more advanced, required a lot of complicated and more expensive production costs. The MiGs were pretty easy to put together, and the Soviet authorities decided to produce only a single fighter at the time, and they chose the MiG-15 over the La-15 just because the MiGs were cheaper. That was it. That was their only reasoning. It didn't matter if the La-15s were technically better from every other category. They spent less money on the MiGs. And that was good enough for them, apparently. And most of the La-15s weren't even scrapped. Oh no, they used them as targets at various nuclear bomb tests. Yeah, really. The one was spared. There is a single La-15 on static display at the Central Air Force Museum at Monino, just outside of Moscow. So one lived. But it's just kind of a shame looking at it. It seems like Lavochkin actually saw the future well before Mikoyan Gurevich, but the Soviets just didn't want to spend the money. And, the rest is history, I guess. The Saab 21R. If you play War Thunder, you might have seen this before. Because it looks ridiculous, but there are several reasons for that. This thing first flew on March 10th, 1947, and was introduced in 1950. This is a Swedish fighter attack aircraft. And Sweden, you know, really I think needs more appreciation in general, because Saab, as a company, or Svenska Aeroplan AB, actually makes really good planes. Like, they made the Gripen, the Draken, the Viggen. These are all fantastic jets, actually. And in terms of jets, the 21R was their first. And it has an interesting distinction. See, technically speaking, this aircraft did not start its life as a jet. And along with the Soviet Yakovlev Yak-15, the 21R is one of only 2 jets that were successfully converted from piston-powered aircraft. Indeed, the 21R's forebearer was the Saab 21, which was a pusher plane, a single-seat low-wing monoplane fighter and attack aircraft. It was pretty unorthodox, but being a pusher actually kind of helped it be converted into a jet a lot easier. And the 21R did okay. It was a perfectly fine plane. Although old school in a lot of its attributes, it was alright, especially for a quick and easy conversion. They had a crew of 1, a length of 10.55 meters, a wingspan of 11.37 meters, a gross weight of 4,340 kilograms, and were powered by a single de Havilland Goblin 2 centrifugal flow turbojet engine that provided 2,980 pounds of force. The maximum speed was only 500 miles per hour, so pretty slow by jet standards, though not bad for the time, and all in all, they performed pretty much just as well as the 21s had. Just a little bit faster because of the jets. They were okay, but they were very quickly outclassed, only being produced for 2 years and only 64 being constructed. The Saab would move forward into more modern designs and produce the Saab 29 Tunnen, which offered a much more modern take on jets, and it was in the air by October of 1948. The 21Rs, while they were originally intended to be fighters, weren't as good as the 29 when it came to this regard, so they converted the ones they had to attack aircraft instead, and even there they didn't really last particularly long. They were retired by 1956, and not a single one was held for preservation, which is a real shame because they're very unique, but there is one in existence, just not an original. In the 1990s, a group of volunteers got a hold of a surviving derelict Saab 21, and they simply rebuilt it for static display into a 21R for the Swedish Air Force Museum, which technically makes it a 21R because, I mean, that's what they were conversions of 21s. That's a pretty cool thing all around. It's nice to keep unique history alive. And with that, a special thank you to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Orange Glass, Benjo Owens, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Brian, Jack Carson's Railroad Videos, Lord Off 444, A Person 723, Ro Hudson 2860, Isaac for 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Red Lion, Ennis Productions 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Ohio Trucker 1, Andrew Bowen, Josh Johnson, Hayden DeGrow, Caleb Rainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, The Oklahoma Hot Rail, Liam Wright, Mr. Sleepy, Travis Dolinsky, Jared Brussel, Joshua Long, Hannah Bird, Amtrak 2024 Productions, Tommy Rossini, That Guy with a Beard, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitson 131-232, Mark Holding, Dr. Racer 78, G-Wiz, Mr. Terevel, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fun farewell.